Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod as we look ahead to the final matches in this year's Six Nations. But we must first touch on last weekend. Alan and Matt, as always, with me. Alan, we'll start with you. A disappointing day, wasn't it, to say the obvious, for Ireland against England?
Yeah, it was. I suppose it was going into the game. The form suggested that Ireland would win, get the job done. England's attack has been questioned a lot. They responded. They obviously had 2 weeks since the Scotland game, which they were poor in that game, bar the start of the game against Scotland a couple of weeks. So they brought a lot of aggression, emotion, passion, which wouldn't have surprised me, wouldn't have surprised the Irish team. And Ireland were a little bit off it. Tactically, they made some mistakes and they kicked poorly at times. And the kick chase was off a little bit. So I think they would have been quite frustrated looking back on that. But ultimately, the energy England brought and the work rate and the intensity got them the job done, albeit by a point. It could have been a little bit more. But Ireland were in a position, with 1 minute to go, they're leading the game. And I think what we've seen from this team the last couple of years, I think you would imagine they'd have the composure and the control to see it out. But credit to England, they deserved the game.
Matt, Ireland were a wee bit off it, but England were good, weren't they? They hadn't played like that in a while.
Last time I saw England play like that, they beat New Zealand in the semi-final of the 2019 World Cup. So I think we have to say that it was Ireland brought the best out in them. This was the game's about challenges and rising to challenges. And somehow that English team found something in them and they excelled. They played really good rugby. They scored great tries, attacked in a way we have not seen under Steve Borthwick in any way. They got fast ruck ball, and that the basis of that was exactly what Alan said: their physicality, their urgency, and all of those things combined with what Alan said. That still Ireland at the 80th minute were in front. It tells you the quality of this Irish team when they can be so far off the pace, but still be leading. But in the end, it just wasn't enough. It was a great test match, phenomenal test match. Here's the other thing. Back-to-back Grand Slams are really hard to do. That's why no one's done them. It's so hard to be at the right level of intensity for 10 games, 2 years in a row, 5 away, 5 at home. And Ireland were seconds away from achieving it. But that's the nature of the game. And Alan is quite correct. And Andy Farrell was quite correct in saying that if Ireland had won, it would have been injustice. The best team won.
Alan, going into that match, to be fair to Peter O'Mahony and Andy Farrell, they expected England to be good. Maybe the media and us, so to speak, or different people in the media were saying, it's a 10-point, advantage to Ireland. That was the bookies thought, or 11 points. But they expected England to be right on it, and that's what happened.
Maybe people like you, Stuart, set me and Matt Williams and me up.
You've got your own voice, lad.
But you created that narrative. It's all your fault. No, of course.
I think about it, Al, you're right.
Yeah, he sets us up every week. But look, at the end of the day, of course, there's always a danger. In any talk I had last week about the England game, I spoke about all we can do is speak about facts and form. So the facts and the form that England have shown us would have indicated that from an attack point of view, they weren't creating very much at the World Cup or in the Six Nations. We all said they've good players and tactically the way they're set up is the problem. Not that they're not good enough and they don't have athletic, dangerous people playing for England. I think that was probably the frustrating thing for English fans is there's actually a lot of good players in that English team. One-off games, yes, we saw in the World Cup. The weather was really poor that night in Paris. It was lashing rain. It was difficult conditions. It suited that English team against South Africa because they were able to muscle up, physically get into the South Africans and kick really well, put pressure on, win a knock-on, squeeze South Africa, get a couple of penalties. And they did that brilliantly. We know they're always capable of imposing their physicality. That's a given with England. And I say that as a former player who experienced that and who saw that up close and personal. And I think what we saw, as I said, what we've seen from England in recent times, not just this World Cup or since Steve Borthwick, is the last 3 Six Nations, they've only won 2 games in each one. So there's a fair bit of evidence to say here that England haven't been great for a while. Matt referenced 2019. A lot of the English pundits that I saw online or on social media in the last couple of days and last weekend was reminding of the last time they saw England play that well was that semi-final in 2019 in Japan. So they got it right, and credit to Steve Borthwick. He's taken a fair bit of flack. The team have taken flack, and it does, I know when you're kind of rallying the troops and everyone's against you on the outside, it does give you an extra spring in your step. Andy Farrell and Peter O'Mahony and the Irish players and other coaches would have known that there's going to be a fair reaction coming here. So I think we based it on what we've seen. I said many times last week that the ex-player in me will never let me go, oh well, in any sport, or, you know, if I support Liverpool playing soccer and they're playing a third division team in the FA Cup, that Liverpool are going to win 7-0 here or 10-0 or whatever, I'm hesitant. Something can happen. You can get a deflection off a corner, you can get a free kick, and then they shut up shop, and then the opposition, the favourites, can make mistakes. And that's the great thing about sport. I'm not saying that was entirely the case, because tactically England were really good last week. Where Ireland were naive was they didn't foresee the possibility of England's counter-attack. Furbank, Freeman and Face Waboso with their counter-attack and their danger, I think they caused Ireland problems with that, and Ireland were quite narrow. First try is a kick upfield from James Lowe, highlighted very well by everybody. They were quite narrow. Calvin Nash comes in to make the tackle. He gets concussed. Robbie Henshaw then makes a tackle, and just that fold around the corner could have been better. Caelan Doris kind of just comes forward and the pass just gets away from him. And then Ollie Lawrence scores. Ireland are 17-8 up in the second half of that game. And very soon afterwards, Jamison Gibson Park kicks the ball up the touchline. They play it in field. There's a bit of bobbling around the middle. They're popping it out with the tackles. And suddenly they come back that way again. And our outside defender is Tyg Furlong. So that's not Ireland that we've seen, that shape, that organisation. And that was the way back into this game for England. They brought them right back into it with that try. They scored it brilliantly, in fairness. Joe McCarthy shot out of the line. So they made little errors there. And I'm not trying to individualise this. I just think it summed up the whole day. The end passage of play, Ian Henderson wins the line-out. Conor Murray and they rumble an English guy into touch, 76 or 77 minute, and Ireland have the line-out. Ian Henderson wins it cleanly at the back of the line-out. Ireland are about 2 yards inside their own 22. They pass it infield to Jack Conan, who is illegally tackled by Ben Earl right in front of the referee. There was decisions in the game that could have went either way, and I think the referee got stuff wrong for both sides. I think, in particular, I say this from an Irish point of view, they got away with a couple of breakdown penalties, and England were penalised twice the breakdown. Ollie Lawrence for one, which I thought was fine. I think there was another one that was very similar to Bundy Aki's one that he got rewarded. I think the hands were on the ground. But anyway, I go to the end piece there where Jack Conan makes that carry. He flips right over down his head. For me, the reason I'd highlight that one, because it's foul play. It's not a decision by the referee that could have went either way. It's clear foul play. Jack Conan could have broken his neck right in front of the referee. Ireland should have got a penalty for that. They didn't. Conor Murray from that breakdown kicks it up the touchline. Everybody's asking, well, should he kicked it long? Why didn't he do this? My point is, why they played it in or pass in field, and then to ask your scrum half to kick it from the base of that breakdown. We don't have visuals here, but I'm saying that ball should have been cleared. When Ian Henderson wins the line-out, they have good control on the maul. That should be James Lowe and Jack Crowley behind that maul, one on either side to use, whichever was the better option, or else Conor Murray to clear straight from the back of the maul. There's no need to play it in one phase. They might say, or someone might say to me, well, it's to bring England up a little bit. But I just think at the back of that maul, that's Conor Murray thumping it long down the field, getting our kick chase. And then England have to come from 60, 70 yards to beat Ireland. The other thing that caught Ireland was off that line-out from Conor Murray clearing it. England went to a 4-man line-out. They went for width. Ireland were very passive in the 13 channel, and unlike Robbie Henshaw, he gets kind of marched back 10 yards, hanging on to an English player who has the ball. Off that ruck, then all the trouble ensues. So I know I went on a bit forward tactically there, but there's a couple of things there that stand out for me. So England surprised Ireland. Did they surprise all the pundits? Well, the other thing I would address is arrogance. I genuinely don't believe there's any arrogance in the Irish squad. I don't think, not with Andy Farrell. I don't think there's arrogance in me in the sense that I completely dismissed England. I kept saying last week, if you don't turn up right with your head screwed on and you're willing to roll up your sleeves in any match in this situation away from home, you're going to come undone and you're in trouble. And I'm not saying Ireland did that, but I highlighted that. But the fact of the matter is a lot of people got a little bit blindsided by England's quality and their execution and the way they counter-attacked in particular. They didn't have to get into 10, 15, 20 phases in any form of the attack. It was 4, 5, 6 phases max, and they caused problems for Ireland. So I think Ireland, it's a harsh lesson for Ireland. It's a harsh lesson for them. I think there was some people in the media probably got ahead of themselves, yes, but all the English media were surprised themselves.
Matt, a final point on last weekend, which I want to get your thoughts on. Look, the 6-2 over the last year or 9 months, at some stage was always going to be questioned, even though you've questioned it the whole time. It became a cropper because of Calvin Nash and Kieran Frawley getting injured a bit later. And secondly, so just picking up on that, the Conor Murray, as a coach, would you expected him to go long and keep it in play, or was touch the right call?
Well, let's start with the 6-2. Okay, it's usually 5-3. So let's even take a step back from that. Let's put a myth to the marketing spin of the bomb squad and the finishers that the media have been complicit with. Your bench, your 16 to 23, has two functions: to come on and be impact players, and in case of emergency, to break glass. Emergency being injury. When you go with a 6-2 or a 7-1, you're rolling the dice that you don't need to break glass in case of emergency. Ireland went with 6-2, and guess what? They've had to break the glass and there was nothing there. They roll the dice. When you go to 6-2 or 7-1, you're rolling the dice. You're going with less backs. And this time they rolled the dice and it came up snake eyes, as the Americans say. That cost them a game. There's no two ways about it. There's no two. You can.
So if they have 5-3,
exactly right,
Matt, they win that game.
Absolutely, because he's the last player of the game. Robbie Henshaw was out in his feet. If you had Gary Ringrose on the bench, you have different replacements there. If you have the last player of the game, all that game, you don't have Conor Murray playing for an hour. He's only played 20 minutes on his way through. He has to play an hour at super fast rugby, test match rugby. He hasn't done that for a long time. It changes the entire game. It changes Ireland's complete. You've got Jamison Gibson-Park on the wing. You've had to take our best fullback out, put him on the wing. Both times they scored tries, our players were down with head injuries. It changes everything. So I am a great supporter of Andy Farrell, and I think the way he's conducted himself before the game and after the game has been superb. I do not believe Ireland were arrogant, like Quinny says. None of us were arrogant. All of us said all week, you can't guarantee this, but the evidence says Ireland would win. And up until the 81st minute, the evidence was right, even when they're playing bad. The 6-2 bench bit them on the arse big time. And if teams keep playing it, you might get away with it, but you also might get bitten. And that's why. And there's no two ways about it, that was a major factor in the game. The second part of that, I think everyone's jumping on Conor. I want Conor to put that ball into touch. I would like another 20 metres on it. Why? Because it buys time, and from a set play, your defence is far better. During the game when we kicked long, as Alan just said, the counter-attack was really poor. The kick chase was really poor against England's counter attack. Going for touch is the right thing. Connor only made 15 metres. That's the problem. Really, from your 22 to the 10 metre line, that was the big problem. Second part was exactly what Alan said. It's a 4-man line out. Let's do the maths. Four from 15. That means there's 11 in your line. You've got a fullback back, so let's say 10. So there's 10 players who should have sprinted up and caught England behind the line. Why didn't they sprint up? They're tired. Why were they tired? Well, a lot of the backs were tired because we didn't have the ability to use our replacements because of the 2 injuries, because we had a 6-2 bench. And Robbie Henshaw, as Alan said, they targeted Henshaw, the gap between Henshaw and his wingers. And they got a lot of joy with it. When it was Jamison Gibson Park, they got as the winger, who should never have been there, they got joy. And that time it was James Lowe. And again, Alan's right. After tackle 2, we were 5 metres from the Irish try line. And that, therefore, the game, and then the arm went up for a penalty. Whether they would have kicked it or not, it doesn't matter. England won. But, remember, at elite level of rugby, as we saw in that game, there's cigarette papers between them. And when you make a tactical error on the 6-2 and the rugby gods decide they're going to play with you that day, that's what happens.
So no back-to-back Grand Slams for Ireland, but a championship still to win on Saturday. Alan against Scotland. He's gone and picked his team, Andy Farrell, with the 5-3, Murray, Harry, Byrne and Ringrose this time. Taking on a Scotland side, obviously got it after that defeat against Italy, but they weren't good enough. They weren't,
and inconsistent. Again, that's a word that's been kind of used with them. I listened to Andy Nicholl this week, him talking after the former Scottish international British and Irish line, and the frustration that is there. I think on another day and in another kind of situation, and if you reverse back a few weeks ago, if we're all talking about, Scotland should have beaten France and they should be 4 from 4. This should be, they should be going for a Grand Slam themselves here. But they just can't seem to get to that level, even though they have a very talented team that are very capable against most sides. So to go to Rome, start the way they did, to score 2 early tries, I thought they were going to blow Italy away. And I said, look, this is a ruthless edge that I like to see them. They were very dominant. I think they were 14-3 up. Garbisi gets a penalty right from the kickoff to give Italy a 3-0 lead. But the 2 tries then, there's a lot of physical dominance. There's a lot of accuracy. There's variety. There's great pressure in their attack on the Italians. They're winning gain lines. And I thought, this is exactly where you want to start. That's what Gregor Townsend would have wanted. But Italy clung in there, and they were hanging in there for a while, and then they get the try themselves from Nacho Brex, the chip over from Pezzarello, ironically 2 Argentinians, but there's a good few Argentinians Italian qualified and vice versa, but they get the try, brings them right back into the game, and then they start to believe, and they start putting pressure on Scotland. They get to half time. I think there's a crucial moment in that second half where Scotland can pull away when Schumann blocks someone in the back line, and it's deemed as I think George Horne was gone through for a try, and it was chalked off. Italy go up the field a few minutes later, Lina's scoring, and it's a 14-point swing. So without getting into the specifics of it, I just thought Scotland were poor from probably after 20 minutes into the game. The next 60 they were poor, and they sat back a little bit, and Italy got belief, and they came out after half time, and they were a different side defensively. They were getting off the line much more aggressively, and Scotland couldn't get any sort of cohesion or flow in their game. And in the end, it's a fantastic win for Italy, and one that I was obviously surprised, because I didn't think, I thought Scotland would get the job done and set themselves up really well for coming to Dublin this week. But again, very, very poor at times, and that Scottish side were. They've made changes. Ben White comes back in at scrum half. I think he's been a superb player from top quality player for Toulon as well, and very, very dangerous player
Stafford McDowell in the centre.
Stafford McDowell, yeah, he's a big rangy guy. He's physical as well and very athletic. He comes in for Cameron Redpath, who moves to the bench. Other than that, it's kind of the same team. And look, it's understandable. People are probably going to talk about the Andy Farrell selection as well, having an unchanged starting team. Matt will probably elaborate a bit more on this, but as a coach, I think it's a collective thing when you lose games like that. Nobody had a real stinker. Of course, people had quiet games, and some of the kind of comments online about some of the Irish players is just incredibly disrespectful, and coming from people who have no clue about sport, no clue about what the sacrifices, commitment, desire, and the way sport works, that some days you can be just busting a gut and it's just not happening for you. Coaches see that, intelligent rugby people and intelligent people coaching GA, soccer, whatever the sport. But the inclination, and I'd be the same, is you want to try and get the best out of those guys who, first of all, were good enough to be selected. So they're good players and you want the reaction. Obviously, if it happens a second time, and the worst thing, because if you lose a match and you rotate, that we hear a lot, then that can have a negative effect in the whole group, that I've been made a scapegoat because we've lost. So a lot of these players are very good players, but I think if they don't beat Scotland, yes, I think some of them could come under a lot more pressure and scrutiny, because there's a certain number of players who probably won't make the next World Cup anyway, and it might force Andy Farrell's hand to say, right, we've got to start going now. I think he's looking at this in different blocks, and he just wanted to get just through this block of Six Nations and try and win it. South Africa is going to be another challenge because, physically you're going to Southern Hemisphere against the world champions. And I don't know if I don't know what his plans are, obviously, but I agreed with keeping the vast majority of guys. And he's capped so many players in the last number of years. But ultimately, getting back to Saturday, I think you'll get a hungry, kind of driven approach from these players. And sometimes it's fair to give players a chance to react and to atone for a bad day at the office when they only lost by a point. And as Matt said, England played really well and Ireland probably underperformed tactically. I think there was a lot of tactical stuff that went wrong. But Scotland, they're going to come with the same thing, aren't they? They're going to come with a desperate drive and desire. Because I think if they were to turn Ireland over, it's a massive scalp for them. And when you're favourites and you're up where Ireland are, being number one, number two in the world, they're a target. Everybody gets that extra edge to try and beat you. England did that for their own reasons, obviously because of their own pressures. But Scotland and Gregor Townsend, they're under pressure now because, ultimately, if they don't win on Saturday, they've lost 3 games in the championship. France, Italy and Ireland, if they don't. So, a lot of people talking about one of the best Scottish teams that's been around for a long time. There's reason to say that because there's some very good players in that Scottish team. But so the point I'm making here is, even though both, we're all disappointed it's not a Grand Slam for Ireland, and maybe that scenario where Scotland can topple and stop them winning a Grand Slam, there's still going to be a fair bit of niggle and bite and pressure on both sides because they have to perform. Whoever loses this game there'll be questions asked.
Matt, going back to Scotland, Grant Gilchrist was saying this week that they went away from the Gregor Townsend script and it was a issue and they shouldn't have done that. And also we talked about the mentality in the Scotland team hasn't been great. They got badly beaten by Ireland in the World Cup and that stuck with him. It's so hard, this Scotland team, just to make of them, Alan, saying, there was chat they were one of the greatest teams to go, but it could end up being 2 wins, as he says, and that's just not good enough, is it?
It's not.
For their standards.
Absolutely. And let's, the players have got to own this, right? So if we're saying there's talent there and they're constantly, this is the Scottish team, constantly coming out and playing well, let's just to stick to this Six Nations. Against Wales, winning Cardiff for the first time in 20 years, but they scored 28 points in 45 minutes. And then led in 27. Here's the inconsistency. They go up against France, dominate France earlier, looking like they're going to win, stop playing and lose. They then play really well against England. They then go to Rome, where they should have won. And Alan's right, they should have won that game going away. They scored 2 fast tries, so they're playing well. And then they fall apart. Now, the players have got to own a lot of this. They can't keep saying, I had chicken and not pasta for lunch. It's the coach's fault. It's not. It's the guys have got to own it. They've got to own their responsibility. On the other side of that, let me also say in front of 75,000 people at the Olympic Stadium, the Italians' defence, which has been appalling at times during the World Cup, was magnificent in the second half. And they literally tackled Scotland out of that game. Their defence was superb in the second half. There were 4 or 5 great driving tackles and one-on-one tackles, try stoppers that were really took some courage. And so we've got to give the Italians a lot of credit here for their win. It was a great win for the championship. The question you now have, having said all that, if we look forward to this week, the Scottish players and the Irish players will be very down emotionally. The Grand Slam's gone for Ireland. And as you rightly said, Stuart, what had the makings of a great championship could be a disastrous championship for the Scots. So the emotions of these teams are right on Saturday. Both on Saturday, we're in the change room, right rock bottom. It's who can recover the most, who can get back up to base level, and has a motivation to play. Now, obviously, we know what the Irish motivation is. They've got the chance to win a cup. Now, let's put that in perspective. There's a lot of people being really disrespectful. Alan used that word about talking about players. I couldn't agree more about the disrespectful stuff. Players, these Irish players deserve our respect, not because they've been given a jersey, because they've earned our respect. They didn't play well enough to win that game last week. But some of the things that are said, and Alan used the word, it is disgraceful, disrespectful and disgraceful. So let's put all that to one side. If this Irish team can win, the only other team that has won a Grand Slam followed by a championship is Jackie Cole's side from the 40s. I want to say 48, 49. Kieran Fitzgerald's sides in 82 and 83 won back-to-backs, but they didn't win a Grand Slam. So Ireland have only won, in 141 years, Ireland only won 15 championships. They've come last 24 times, more than any other team. And people are somehow knocking that this team will win a championship and not a Grand Slam. I mean, I just find that the absolute peak of ignorance. And as Alan said, people who are saying this have never laced on a boot. So, let's put all that garbage over where it belongs. In the clickbait stuff in your phone. Don't look at it. If Ireland can come out and win, this is a great win. A championship. Now, the Scots capable of beating Ireland, 100% capable, but will they turn up in the right frame of mind and give 80 minutes? Now, the only time they've given anywhere near 80 minutes was England at home. So that is the question we don't know. And you know what? I don't think the Scots know. Because those guys, they haven't, what we just said about Ireland, they're not going out in each game saying, we're going to lose this in the second half. There's something in their mentality and in their mental preparation that's failing them. And I think part of it is they get ahead and then they just think, we've got this one. And that if you look at all the games, with the exception of the English game, that's what's happened. They've dominated early and then they've dropped off. But at the Aviva, Ireland won 18 straight at Aviva. Scotland are going to have to start hot or they could be in for a hard day.
Alan, are these facts true? I think they are, the word fact. Ireland have beaten Scotland the last 9 times. 2010 is the last time Scotland have beat them in Dublin. But yet, if Scotland win, it'll be the first Triple Crown since 1990. Does that sound about right?
Oh, it sounds about right. You've done your research, Stuart, as any good presenter would. Credit to him there, Matt.
You don't know if it's true, though. There might be one wrong, but if that is, my point is, 2010 is a long time.
Yeah, the last time in Dublin.
Yes, time in Dublin.
The last time they beat him was 17 over when the bus was late in Murrayfield.
Triple Crown.
It's incredible. To go back to that situation, I remember that Was it a Grand Slam they won or Triple Crown in 1990? David Soul was the captain anyway.
I'm going to say.
I remember beating,
Their last
Gavin Hastings was playing, Scott
Hastings
Hastings,
was it 1999?
Finley Calder, some great players.
John Jeffries.
Yeah, John Jeffries as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard to believe that, isn't it? But look, that's the reality, and that's why, Scotland. They're always a very difficult side, and to play against.
And you always say they're dangerous, which they are. So dangerous.
They are, yeah. But I think for some reason, and maybe it's just, I think the lack of. Their problem has been up front a lot of the time in the last, in my kind of recent memories, Ireland have dominated them physically, not entirely at the set piece where you're pushing them off scrums and winning every line-out, not that, just in the collisions and footballing ability around the field and athleticism. I think you look at the players who are playing from now, and Darge is a great player. Dempsey I'm a fan of his. Fagerson's a very good player. There's something missing though.
What is that thing?
I don't know. I just think the overall ballast, they don't have it in the loose, and they can't dominate teams for long enough. Of course, they can have moments and look like they're really aggressive and physical, but they just don't seem to be able to sustain it. And like George Turner is a brilliant hooker. He's probably the standout player for Scotland last week. He's work rate, he's energy around the field. Xander Fagerson's a really good scrummager. He was starting tight end for the Lions a couple of years ago. I think maybe the second row has been a place where they've had just a real presence. And I know Grant Gilchrist, I don't want to be he's been a very good player for club and country, but there's something just that next level of how many of these guys are going to start on the Lions team next year of their forwards. Can you tell? Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
And that's where you kind of judge it.
Are you trying to say they don't have the likes of Joe McCarthy coming through?
Well, I don't. They're just top level. The only one I could pick there, I think Fagerson obviously has a very good chance as tight end. Schoeman has a chance, but I'm not really picking anyone else out of that pack. Darge has a chance, and Dempsey maybe, but you need to be picking 4 or 5 guys that are chomping at the bit, and that's been the problem for a long period of time. The last couple of Lions tours, how many were there in New Zealand? 2017, same with 2021. So ultimately, I think up front is where the problems have been, and that's probably the main reason why they haven't been winning championships or sustaining it. On a given day, they can be very, very dangerous, very attack-minded in their approach, but it's just that physical approach up front, I think, has let them down at times. Now, it'll probably be taken and clipped, and maybe we'll be play to the Scottish lads in the dressing room at the weekend that I've said they're soft. I'm not saying
clips of Matt. Matt, it's going to be
it's usually Matt. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying again. You're asking me why, and maybe that's what kind of jumps out my mind, that they haven't been physical enough or dominant enough up front.
Matt, there's normally plenty of chat before this game, even from maybe a couple of Scottish players or the media as well, which I've addressed a few times. But this game actually seems a lot quieter from both teams.
Well, they're still scraping themselves off the floor. They both teams where their hearts broken. Grand Slams, back-to-back Grand Slams don't come along every day of the week. We said it's only been once before Ireland have had the opportunity back-to-back Grand Slams, and that was Jackie Cole's team, and the guys are blowing it. And that's the hard part, when you know you had an opportunity for something and it's gone. So then they've got to refocus and, well, we've still got something else. The Scots on the other side, they've just been beaten by Italy in front of 75,000 people. So they are really rock bottom. So, it doesn't surprise me that there's not much being said, because I think both camps are, one, focusing on lifting themselves up from this emotional hole that they've been dropped in. It's not like they've got a 2-week turnaround like England had. Scotland in particular, away to Rome, back into camp in Scotland, and back over to Ireland either today or tomorrow, and getting ready for the game. There's very short turnarounds and short amount of time to get themselves adjusted, readjusted. For the Aviva, now we talked about tough places to go away last week. Was Twickenham hard? To everyone else in the world, the Aviva is becoming one of the hardest places in the world to go. So, this is the 18 straight wins at home. This is a huge challenge. So I'm not surprised at that. The second part of all that is, I do think the Scots this season have treated the media and what they're saying in the media with far more respect and far more caution. And I support that. I support what they've done. I support what Rory Darge has done. And I support what Finn Russell and how they've conducted themselves publicly. I think it has been a major step forward for the Scottish side. And because they're trying to let their actions on the field do the talking for them, which is right. But then when you lose to Italy away, it's very hard to say anything after that, except we've got a game coming up for redemption. And for both of these teams, this game holds redemption. For Ireland, the redemption is the championship, which is a phenomenal carrot. And for the Scots, obviously, it's a triple crown. Again, a phenomenal carrot. But again, I'm concerned more for the Scots being able to pick themselves up than I am for the Irish. The Irish coming home for the last game where they really have a lot to play for, I think is a lot more motivation than the Scots have.
Alan, we've got 10 minutes because Matt has a flight to catch, so hopefully he stays with us. We must touch on the last two games. England v France. England will be bouncing over to Lyon, but France were pretty good against Wales. I'm not saying they're back to their best, but geez, they had a few big boys coming on. Henry Colombe and Tafanur brothers, they're absolute units.
Yeah, it's the first time that Fabien Galtier is naming unchanged team since last February last year. So a little bit of continuity there. I think they would have been... They're pretty dominant, I think, from a power point of view in Cardiff, which is understandable given where Wales are and the inexperience that Warren Gatland has had to introduce and the changes he's had to make this year and all the quality that he's lost in recent times with retirements, etc. France were very dominant probably for the last... I think Wales were still leading in the 65th minute, which was an incredible effort. They got tired and France changed gears in the end. But ultimately the power kind of took over. The concession of some of the tries that Rio Dyer's try, I think Sean Edwards will be going crazy with that. The Thomas Williams one as well. So credit to Wales, and that was their approach. It's kind of a less pressurised approach this year because of all the changes. But for France, they'll really want to finish in a high. I think Ireland caused some psychological damage with that first win in Marseille. They got the result in Scotland. Really disappointed, I'm sure they would have been with the draw against Italy. So they'll want to finish in a high. And no, England, the rivalry there is massive as well. England are going for a championship as well, so it makes that a great finish, I think. And for France, they'll want to finish on a high from this game. And there was a lot of power having Miafu and Tau Fefenua back, those two players. I think they'll need him against England because England will be bouncing after Twickenham last week. And let's see if they can back up a performance as well, the English side. They'll be definitely much more confident going over to Lyon, and that should be a cracker of a game as well. So it makes it really interesting because, again, everybody wants to finish on a high and finish off the tournament well. And I think France could be very dangerous, and particularly at home. They're missing a few players, obviously, still. But I love the fact that Bié-Barry, Deporter in the centre, he's a lovely player at 12, very young. They were all under 20s last year. Le Garrick has been really good for him at the weekend. Different sort of pressure he'll feel from that English back row this week, but Mafu's in the centre and Tau Fefenua to come off the bench as well. There's power there. Aldred been back as well last week was really important for them. But England are going to run them close. I think they're definitely going to be buoyed by the fact that they'd beaten Ireland last week in Twickenham.
Matt, Le Garrick was player of the match. He looked very lively, but also very controlled. What's the chat over there? If France are to beat England, turns into a bit of an okay championship. Would that be fair to say? Or, a couple of weeks ago we were chatting about Galtier being under serious pressure. Is he still under that amount of pressure, Matt? Or does he need to win this weekend?
Well, winning solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? And when after the draw against Italy, he was really under the pump, copping it. Good win against Wales. Look, the scoreboard flattered France. The Welsh were very brave and hung in there. I thought the Welsh scramble defence was just superb. It's just wow. So many times I thought France are going to score here. And you could see Damien Penaud was clawed down about 4 times. He thought he's clear, he's going to score, and the scarlet jerseys were so desperate. I can see Gatlin in a strange way with that scoreline, but he would have been so proud of some of the aspects of that game. But the Welsh just didn't have the talent. And they had the courage and they had the effort. They just haven't got the talent of the opposition. The thing that worries me about the French, sorry to Stu, to answer your question, he is under pressure, and when this championship is over, he will face some very tough questions. If they can beat England in what they call here the crunch, if they win the crunch, he'll be okay. If they lose, then the drums will start, and they'll start looking for his head, as always they do with the poor old coach. When anyone loses, he's sitting in the stand having a cup of tea, and he gets blamed for everything everyone else does. What concerns me about the French is they seem to have gone to an attacking system, especially early on, where it's just one-off runners. And they did it against Wales. Again, the props carried so many times in that first 20 minutes. I reckon you only carried maybe 15 times. I didn't see the stats. I started to count it and just got distracted. But it was just incredible how many times the props were carrying, second rows were carrying, and they didn't have any shape or any creativity. And eventually that wore the Welsh out. Now, if they do, and let me say, Le Garrick adds that little bit of X factor. I thought he was better, and I thought Ramos was much better at 10 than Jalabert has been. And interestingly, it's come out that the Toulouse players through the World Cup were calling for Ramos to be at 10 and not Jalabert. And I supported that. I didn't think Jalabert should have been in the team from the start. He's very good with Bordeaux, but he hasn't been good at the elite end. And I thought he had a very poor World Cup and he had a very poor few games. He got injured, and I think Ramos has really helped get some more stability around their attack. But if you're just going one-off runners, even when you're a big man against England, that's not going to work. England will eat you up doing that, because that's exactly what Wales did. So I think France will have to find something else. The other aspect is England were high as kites after that game. So your emotions, high and low, have to come down to that base level. I'm not sure they can recover and deliver an equally physical performance in Lyon that they did at Twickenham. And I think a lot of this game will determine on the mentality and emotional state of the English side. I think the French will be up for it. They're at home. It's a big stadium, big crowd. They'll be loving it. But I'm not so sure that the English will be ready at the same level they were at Twickenham. So all the things Alan said is right. It's a close game. France can't just do the one-off runners. Are England recovered emotionally? It's all those beautiful questions we love. And I hope that this round of rugby is as good as the last round, because the 3 games we saw, even though Alan and I got predicted 2 of them wrong, it was a fabulous game, a fabulous round of footy. It was just so entertaining to watch. Every game was a great game. It was positive. Ball was in play. Guys were going at it. You couldn't ask for better rugby. And because the first 3 rounds, apart from the Irish game, 1 or 2 of the Irish games, especially in Marseille, they weren't great spectacles. So let's hope the last round's equally as entertaining, and Quinny and I get a few more of the predictions right than we did the last time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're always getting those predictions wrong. But, right, you need to go Italy, Wales. Can Italy win 2 games in the championship for the first time in 11 years?
Well, they can. For sure they can. I think the thing that lets us give that a little bit more confidence, they were excellent against France away from home, and then they were excellent again at home. This is a very brave Welsh side, as I said, and a Cardiff It's a tough gig. They did it last time. It's a super close game. I'm going with the good of the game, and I think that I think Italy can do it. But there's nothing between these two teams, and it's just, again, can Wales recover from all their defeats and muster something in the last game? If Italy get in front, I think it'll be very hard for the Welsh.
So, Matt, your predictions then? Wales with a wooden spoon, and who wins the other two?
Yeah, Wales, Ireland, and France.
There you go. We'll let you go. Alan, you're still saying, unfortunately for you. Thanks, Matt. See you shortly.
See you guys.
Cheers, Matt.
Alan, I just want to touch on quickly Peter O'Mahony. We sort of touched about it off air. This will be, if he wins the championship for him, first time captaining Ireland in the Six Nations, be a good way to finish. But do you see him going forward next year? Or do you think this might be the last time we see him in a green jersey?
I don't know. Has he signed the contract yet? That
The bit which makes me think he'll stay on is because there's been no chat about the contract. So
yeah,
or do you see it the other way?
We saw a few weeks ago Conor Murray and himself have been offered contracts, and they seem to have sorted that situation. We haven't heard that they've signed them or anything like that. So I don't know. I think this one could go either way. I just
sitting the fence here.
No, I just find it a little bit strange that we didn't hear any sort of announcement that Peter O'Mahony signed up for the next 2 years or Conor Murray has signed up for the next 2 years, or am I wrong?
No, Conor Murray, I think yesterday or even this morning, has signed a 1-year deal.
Okay, he signed an extension.
Just one.
Yeah, so
But
we
you're
haven't
right, nothing on
we
Peter
haven't heard
O'Mahony.
from Peter O'Mahony, which creates a little bit of doubt as to whether he'll go out on his own terms. I actually was only just thinking about this today, and again, it's speculation, but it'd be a lovely way to go out lifting the kind of Six Nations trophy.
I asked him this yesterday in a sit-down interview.
And what did he say?
Quinny, why would he tell me?
What way did he answer it?
His answer was, I'm very much looking forward to Saturday, and that's all I'm thinking about against Scotland and trying to win a championship.
Yeah, well, he didn't dismiss it. Who knows? It could be something that had happened, but who knows? I think maybe he is just waiting and seeing, and that seems to be the kind of, even the captaincy scenario was, it's for the Six Nations, we'll see how it goes, we'll reevaluate. So I don't know, but if it is, it'd be lovely if he doesn't play, does he want to go to South Africa? Does he want to continue on? Does he want to even try and, go to the next World Cup? Who knows? We've seen plenty of players.
You doubt him, he has an absolute crack.
Yeah,
How many times has he done that in his career?
He's shown so much resilience, and I think he's been an amazing player for Munster and Ireland for such a long time, and so many highs. And I hope he finishes on a high on Saturday as regards the Six Nations. But I just find it a little bit strange that we haven't had any sort of an announcement as to, continuation. I've heard little whispers along the way, frustration about, the whole contract situation. So I don't know. I'd love to see him stay playing. But then there's another part of me would love to see. I always dreamed of going out in the high, maybe be, when I retired, that I could be standing on a podium with my teammates. I wasn't captain, but I just thought it's a lovely way to go, when for some players they can get to their last match essentially is they're lifting a trophy and they're standing on a podium. It's a nice way to go, but it just depends. If he wants to play on and stay on and keep going with Munster and Ireland for the next couple of years, who knows? He's a lot of rugby played, young family.
Got a garden to look after.
He's a centurion as regards caps. He captained British and Irish lines. He's achieved an incredible amount. Munster winning the trophy last year, the URC. So there's a good few boxes ticked there. So it just depends. I don't know, but I wouldn't be shocked if we heard something on Saturday after the game. That's all I would say on it.
And we got Matt's predictions. What about you? Ireland, who do you think will win?
Yeah, I think
Wales will.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Wales.
Back to back.
I think it'll be tough for Wales. Can Italy kind of back up what they did in Rome with that brilliant win, the high they would have got from that? They're probably good enough. I think they have lovely memories of there 2 years ago when Capuozzo kind of announced himself to the world of what he can do when he makes that break and he passes the ball back in for Eduardo Padovani to score that try, and for Garbisi to kick the conversion under the post. They win 22-21. It was incredible. They'll fancy it. Michaela Lamero last week, in interview after the game, he said, we have a big week. We have another opportunity to go and we're going to start thinking about that and dreaming about that. And so they'll be well tuned in there. I just suspect Wales will get something done on the weekend and maybe eke out a result there and take, I wouldn't say it's pressure, but I suppose if we're Italy to beat you at home, yes, that creates a little bit more pressure. If they were to get a win, I think they've got a bit of a pass because of all the changes, and it's a justifiable pass, let's be honest about it. They've lost so much experience in the last 12 months. Iconic players. So I'm going to go Wales, Ireland, and I think England could win in France. So I'm going to go Wales, Ireland and England.
Great stuff, Alan. Thanks for your time. Well, can Ireland win another championship? We'll, of course, have it all the action this weekend. It starts, for an Ireland perspective, on Virgin Media 1 at 4 p.m. from Dublin.